He lied about business trips, until I found the family he was funding in another state. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you die. Mine flashed before me the moment I realized my life was a lie. For 7 years, my husband, Jonathan, was the picture of the successful, devoted partner, always on a plane, chasing the next big deal. He called them business trips. I called them proof of his ambition. But ambition doesn't pay for a sprawling colonial house in suburban Ohio. Ambition doesn't buy a platinum wedding band for another woman named Sarah. And ambition certainly doesn't father 2 beautiful children, a 7-year-old girl named Kate and a 5-year-old boy named Noah, whose faces looked exactly like the man who slept next to me in our Manhattan penthouse. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I didn't want the cheap satisfaction of a theatrical outburst. Jonathan had spent years building 2 perfect lives. I decided I would spend the next few months building a single, perfect plan to collapse both of them simultaneously. When I was done, he wouldn't just be divorced. He'd be ruined, professionally and financially. This is the story of how I took everything from the man who took 7 years of my life. The penthouse on the Upper East Side was a testament to our success. Sunlight, filtered by the geometry of the surrounding skyscrapers, poured across the polished marble floors of our open-plan living room. It was sterile, chic, and precisely the life I, Elizabeth Harper, the meticulous architect, had helped John build. We were the power couple. I ran a boutique firm known for its sharp, minimalist designs. He was the charismatic senior portfolio manager whose face was often quoted on CNBC, managing billions for the prestigious investment bank, Sterling White. Our combined income placed us firmly in the top 1%, a standing earned through relentless, cold-eyed determination. Our marriage wasn't passionate in the tumultuous sense, but it was anchored in a profound, quiet respect and shared ambition. John valued my strategic mind. I valued his relentless drive. At least, that's what I believed. Our routine was a predictable, comfortable symphony. Monday mornings were always the same, John's leather suitcase, always the same black Mont Blanc, standing sentinel by the door. Boston this week, darling, he'd say, kissing me quickly on the forehead, a light, professional kiss. Need to close out the quarterly funds with the New England guys. Back late Thursday. I'd wave from the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching his black town car pull away, feeling a familiar pride. He was chasing success for us. It had been this way for 7 years, 7 years of him being away for 3 or 4 nights a week, every month. 7 years of Boston, Chicago, Palo Alto, and London. My firm had grown, our net worth had soared, and my trust in him was absolute. After all, his sacrifice meant this spectacular, privileged life. The crack in the foundation appeared on a Tuesday morning, a few weeks after our 10th wedding anniversary. John had ostensibly flown to San Francisco the previous night. I was gathering my things for the office when I saw his briefcase, sitting forgotten on the entryway bench, a small, dark shadow against the white marble. He never, ever forgot his briefcase. It was his tether to the financial world. Inside, his laptop, his trading notebooks, and, most importantly, his secondary work cell phone, the burner he used only for client crisis calls and international communication, a tool he guarded like a state secret. I grabbed it, intending to call his assistant to arrange a courier. As the phone shifted in my hand, the screen lit up with a notification, cutting through the silence of our apartment like a gunshot. Payment confirmed. Oak Ridge Academy tuition, $4,850. The text was crisp, immediate, and utterly damning. Oak Ridge Academy. I frowned, a cold furrow forming between my brows. That wasn't the name of a university or a private prep school he managed funds for. A quick Google search on my office computer confirmed it, a high-end, private K-8 elementary school. And the location on the receipt? Columbus, Ohio. A cold dread, sharp and sudden, pierced the complacency of my morning. It wasn't rage. It was the analytical certainty that the numbers did not add up. Columbus, Ohio, was never on his itinerary. ever. The destination was entirely irrelevant to his financial world. I clicked the link on the payment notification. It led to a simple, clean interface for the private suburban school. The account holder name was listed simply as J. Harper. The payment was drawn directly from our joint operating account, the one I rarely looked at, trusting John's management completely. Why would a clerical error from a billion-dollar firm be paid directly from our private account to an elementary school tuition service? The narrative was flawed. He called an hour later, sounding breathless and stressed. Eli. My God, my briefcase. I'm still at the airport. I turned around. Thank God you found it. That's a disaster averted. The phone was on, John, I said, my voice unervingly level, clinical. I saw a notification for a tuition payment. Oak Ridge Academy, in Columbus. Did you accidentally fund a client's education? It was pulled from the joint account. I gave him the space to lie, to invent some convoluted financial scheme that would save face. He cleared his throat, a smooth, practiced sound, attempting to regain control. God, no, Eli. That's a mistake, a massive clerical error at Sterling White. I've been trying to get them to fix it for weeks. It's an old trust fund for a former client's dependents, discretionary spending. They must have accidentally tagged our joint account. I'm handling it. It's embarrassing, but nothing more. Don't worry about it. A mistake. A clerical error. The lie was too simple, too immediate, too insulting to my intelligence. An error that drew nearly $5,000 from our highly regulated, private account and was paid to a suburban Ohio elementary school? Impossible. But I let him have the victory of the excuse. Handle it, John. It worries me when our accounts aren't clean. Just ensure it's logged and corrected. I spent the next 48 hours compiling evidence, not for a confrontation, but for a case. I cross-referenced every expense report he filed, every credit card statement, every Uber receipt, every airfare ticket he left for me to log for our taxes. The official Sterling White records showed flights to Boston. Our joint credit cards showed hotel charges in the financial district of Boston. Everything was perfect, a meticulously crafted illusion. But I found the ghost charges, the faint, recurring signals of another life. Small, consistent cash withdrawals in Ohio. Regular grocery store purchases in the same zip code near Columbus. The purchase of 2 small annual passes to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, bought every May for the last 3 years, always charged to a minor secondary card I never checked. The pattern was invisible unless you were looking for the impossible, looking for a second, fully operational household budget. When John returned on Thursday night, he was cheerful, exhausted, and perfectly loving. He hugged me tightly. Tough week, sweetheart. Boston was a beast. I closed that fund though. We're up another $3 million this quarter. He was still wearing his wedding ring, the one that matched mine. I looked at the man who had shared my bed for 10 years and felt nothing but a cold, architectural assessment of a failed structure. He had not had an affair. An affair is messy, quick, and emotionally driven. John had built a parallel life. That took 7 years of planning, sustained malice, and staggering financial discipline. The next morning, I called my most trusted colleague in the industry. I need a name. Someone meticulous. Not for divorce, but for forensic financial fraud investigation. Private and discreet. That's how I met Mark Denton. Mark wasn't a typical private eye. He was a former IRS forensic accountant with a talent for mapping complex money flows and tracing funds through corporate shell games. We met in a sterile, windowless office downtown. I laid out the few pieces of evidence: the Oak Ridge tuition, the zoo passes, the Columbus ATM withdrawals. I don't need evidence for divorce, Mark, I told him, looking him straight in the eye. I need evidence that he is maintaining an entire, fully funded life in another state. And I need to know how he is funding it without bleeding our main accounts dry. I suspect professional misconduct and illegal trading activity. Mark returned a week later with a file that weighed a ton. I sat alone in our study, a room John had designed, ironically, for transparency, and opened the manila folder. The air thickened around me, becoming heavy with the weight of absolute proof. The first picture was of a beautiful, slightly tired woman, Sarah Morgan, and two small children, a blonde girl and a dark-haired boy, laughing as they held hands near a suburban park entrance. The second was a photo of John. My John. But he wasn't wearing his $1,000 suit. He was in shorts and a polo shirt, grilling hot dogs on a deck, his arm draped around Sarah, his smile wide, unguarded, and real. It was a smile I had never seen, the relaxed contentment of a man who was truly home. The report confirmed everything. Sarah Morgan, 36. Lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in a well-to-do suburb outside Columbus. Children, Catherine Kate Harper, 7, and Noah Harper, 5, the names of his children, the ones I never knew existed. They all bore the middle name Jonathan, a tribute I was never granted. The timeline was the cruelest detail. The children's births aligned perfectly with the start of his aggressive travel schedule 7 years ago. He hadn't cheated, he had remarried in practice, building a family the old-fashioned way, while keeping me as the prestigious, high-maintenance accessory in New York. The financial section was a labyrinth of shadows, a masterpiece of fraud. John had utilized 3 primary, calculated methods. 1. Fraudulent expense reports. He systematically padded his travel expenses, claiming $10,000 for a trip that only cost $5,000, filtering the difference through complicated, reimbursed cash advances. This generated a regular, tax-free stream of income. 2. Secret side accounts and insider trading. He established 2 small portfolio funds under the name of a shell corporation registered in Delaware. These funds were used for high-risk, possibly illegal, short-term trades, insider knowledge gleaned during his legitimate Boston/Chicago meetings. He would short mid-cap stocks he knew his firm was about to advise against, generating quick, untraceable cash that flowed directly to Sarah's household budget. 3. Loan against future bonuses. He took small, recurring loans against his massive future bonuses from Sterling White, essentially taking short-term cash advances to cover large, easily traceable expenditures like the private school tuition, which he would then pay off with the illegal trading profits. He wasn't just a liar, he was an economic terrorist, using his professional position and our marital assets to finance his fantasy life. The rage finally came, but it was cold, precise, and surgical. It was the rage of an architect whose masterpiece has been sabotaged by a petty contractor, threatening the integrity of the entire structure. I called my divorce attorney, Mr. Finch. I did not cry. I did not shout. I presented him with Mark's 300-page dossier and summarized the financial crimes. I need an airtight prenup enforcement, Mr. Finch, I stated, my voice like ice. I want him to walk away with nothing but the clothes on his back. And I want to coordinate the divorce filing with an external action that will ensure he is unable to ever earn this kind of money again. I want him legally, financially, and professionally neutered. Mr. Finch, a veteran of Manhattan's ugliest splits, looked at the photos of the children and then at me. Mrs. Harper, he said slowly, folding his hands, this is unprecedented. You want revenge that transcends divorce and reaches into criminal prosecution. No, I corrected, leaning forward. I want justice that equals the level of the betrayal. He built a structure on a fraudulent foundation, insider trading and marital fraud. I am going to demolish it by informing the authorities who govern both his professional and private life. I took a flight to Columbus the following Monday. A rental car waiting for me at the airport. I didn't book a hotel. I didn't want comfort, I needed clarity. I drove straight to the address in the report, 432, Oakwood Drive. It was a beautiful, tree-lined street, the quintessential picture of American suburban comfort. The house was a classic American colonial, white siding, dark shutters, a basketball hoop in the driveway, and a brightly colored swing set in the backyard. It was the picture of the life John pretended to yearn for, the quiet, suburban fantasy he claimed he couldn't have because his career demanded New York. I parked 3 houses down and waited, observing the world he had stolen to create. Around 3:15 p.m., a yellow school bus stopped. Kate, the 7-year-old, burst out, her blonde hair flying, followed by the smaller boy, Noah, looking serious and carrying a dinosaur backpack. Sarah was waiting on the porch, wearing comfortable jeans and a soft, worn sweater, her hair pulled back. She knelt down and hugged them both, her face alight with genuine, uncomplicated maternal joy. The scene was sickeningly perfect. I felt a pang of profound sorrow, not for myself, but for Sarah. She wasn't the villain. She was just another corner of his constructed reality, a fully realized person whose life was also built on his lie. He was the son of that universe, and I was the son of the New York one. Neither son knew of the other's existence. Then, around 6 p.m., a modest gray sedan, not his usual S-Class, pulled into the driveway. Out stepped John. But this John was different. He changed his expression the moment his foot hit the pavement. He wasn't the sharply tailored, cynical New York executive. He was a dad. He scooped Noah up, spun Kate around, and exchanged a deep, comfortable kiss with Sarah, his hand settling naturally on the small of her back. The intimacy was palpable, easy, and deeply established. This wasn't a transaction. This was a life. A life he cherished enough to steal, cheat, and lie for 7 solid years, risking his entire fortune and freedom. That sight was the final, potent dose of adrenaline. It was the antidote to any lingering regret or pity I might have felt. The damage was total. The demolition needed to be equally total. I drove back to the airport, the cold, quiet architect once again, ready to execute the final blueprint. Back in my penthouse, the blueprints for my firm's newest project, a massive corporate headquarters with complex structural supports, lay spread across the drafting table. I looked at the steel and glass structure and saw John's life. It was massive, impressive, and utterly dependent on the structural integrity of a few key financial pillars. I knew where the pillars were weak. I spent the next 6 weeks meticulously documenting the financial shadows. I wasn't just tracking funds, I was building a compelling, narrative case for the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. His business trips to Boston often aligned precisely with the dates of suspiciously high-volume short trades in the Shell Corporation's accounts, always involving mid-cap companies he was advising sterling white clients not to invest in. It was a clear-cut case of insider trading and gross financial misconduct that no regulatory body could ignore. I used my own firm's infrastructure, a secure, encrypted network, to print and collate everything, ensuring no digital trace was left on our home systems. My movements were calculated. 1. Securing the exit, I transferred all my personal and firm assets into accounts fully separate from John's name, utilizing a trust one had established years ago. The prenuptial agreement ensured that the NYC penthouse and a significant portion of our joint investments were mine upon discovery of marital fraud. My financial independence was my shield. 2. Preparing the payload, I bundled the financial documents, the timelines, the ATM receipts from Ohio juxtaposed with the corresponding Boston hotel bills, and the damning photos from Mark's file. I included an annotated, narrative guide explaining the fraudulent trading patterns, making the complex crimes easily digestible for the investigators. 3. Choosing the targets, the package was duplicated. One went to the SEC's Enforcement Division, addressed directly to a contact Mr. Finch provided, ensuring high-level attention and criminal inquiry. The second, equally damning, went to Mr. Arthur Vance, the global managing director of Sterling White, John's direct superior and a man renowned for his zero-tolerance policy on reputational risk. Vance would move immediately to protect the firm. The hardest part was the waiting. John came and went, playing his part perfectly, still kissing me on the forehead and calling me darling. He brought me a silk scarf from his latest Paris trip. I smiled, thanked him, and felt the steel solidify in my spine. I was playing the waiting game with a man who thought he held all the cards, unaware I had already dealt the final hand. I sent the packages via registered mail on a Friday, timed to arrive at the beginning of the business week. The next 3 days were agonizing, not with doubt, but with anticipation. I pretended to work, but every phone vibration, every siren outside, was a potential alarm for John. The call came Tuesday morning, precisely 9:15 a.m., while John was allegedly in Chicago. It wasn't for me. It was for him. The receptionist at Sterling White called, her voice tight and frantic. "Mrs. Harper? I'm so sorry, but Mr. Vance needs to speak with Mr. Harper immediately. It is urgent. He is not answering his cell or his burner. Do you know exactly where he is?" I kept my voice calm, maintaining the facade of the helpful wife. "He's flying back from Chicago, Susan. He should be landing in an hour or so at JFK. Is everything all right?" There was a pregnant pause. "No, Mrs. Harper. No, it is not. Please have him call Mr. Vance the moment he turns on his phone." I knew what had happened. Arthur Vance had opened the package. The evidence was irrefutable. Reputational risk was Sterling White's kryptonite, and the firm would handle John internally, with extreme prejudice, before the SEC even formally notified them of the criminal referral. John called me an hour later from the airport tarmac. His voice was tight, thin, laced with pure, unadulterated fear. "Eli? Where are you? Get to the firm, now. I need you there." "What's wrong, John?" I don't know. Vance wants to see me. They wouldn't let me back on the floor. My badge is deactivated. The security team met me at the curb. They said something about an internal audit and a financial investigation. His panic was a soothing balm to my soul. The chaos had begun. "I'm sorry, John," I said, utterly devoid of sorrow. "I'm tied up in a major, 7-figure pitch for the new corporate tower. You know I can't leave this. You'll have to handle it. Call me later when you know what's happening." I hung up, terminating the call with the same brutal efficiency he had terminated our marriage. He didn't call later. He didn't call that night. I knew he was trapped in a cold room with Sterling White's general counsel, Mark's meticulous research spread out on the table, the evidence of his betrayal being used as the instrument of his professional demise. He arrived at the penthouse past midnight. He was haggard, his $1,000 suit rumpled, his tie loose. His eyes were wide with a terror that superseded guilt. "Eli. I'm ruined. They know. The SEC is involved. Someone sent them every detail of my trading. They're calling it gross misconduct, possibly insider trading. They've frozen all my accounts. They think I'm skimming from the firm." He collapsed onto the pristine white sofa, running his hands through his hair. "I don't know who would do this. Someone wants to destroy me professionally." I walked over to him, holding a simple manila envelope, the same kind I'd dropped off at the post office. "I do, John." The confrontation was scheduled, not for a lavish meal, but for the next evening. I prepared a simple dinner, roasted chicken and salad, the blandness mirroring the sterile reality of our marriage. John sat across from me, picking at his food, his face gray and defeated. He was a shell of the confident portfolio manager, stripped bare by fear. I watched him, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "You're very calm," he mumbled. Looking up, suspicion finally creeping into his features. "You haven't asked me a single question about the investigation, Eli. You're acting like you already know the answers." "There's no need," I said, setting my fork down precisely. "I know everything." I reached for the manila envelope I had placed by my plate. "I'm not asking for a confession, John. I'm telling you what I know, and what I did." I slid the first document across the table. It was the fully executed complaint for divorce, citing fraud, adultery, and severe financial misconduct as grounds. The prenuptial agreement was attached, specifying his zero entitlement to the Marshall assets due to his actions. He barely glanced at it. His crisis was existential, not marital. Divorce? Eli, no, please. We can fix this. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what, John? My voice was calm, almost conversational, like an architect explaining a structural failure. Did you not mean to purchase a colonial house in Columbus, Ohio? Did you not mean to legally marry Sarah Morgan, the woman with whom you share two beautiful children, Kate and Noah? Did you not mean to spend 7 years of our marriage flying to them, while telling me you were flying to Boston? He froze, his jaw slack. The blood drained from his face, leaving him ghostly white. The name Sarah. The names Kate and Noah. They hit him like physical blows, the realization dawning that every facet of his deception was known. How could you know all of that? He whispered, his voice catching in his throat. I'm an architect, John. I build structures, and I understand foundations. Your foundation was a lie. I hired a forensic accountant. Mark is very good. He didn't just find the double life, John. He found the evidence that you were using insider information gained at Sterling White, to illegally fund your double life. The expense padding, the short trades, the shell corporation accounts. It was all there, mapped out for the authorities. I slid the second document across the table. It wasn't from Mr. Finch. It was a formal notification from Sterling White, confirming his immediate, non-negotiable termination for cause, pending criminal investigation referral. You called me the architect of this ruin, I said softly, my eyes fixed on his shattered face. You asked who wanted to destroy you. I did, John. I built the case. I delivered the evidence to Mr. Vance and the SEC. You used your professional reputation to finance your private fantasy. I used my professional precision to collapse both. He scrambled to stand, knocking over his expensive mahogany chair. You destroyed my life. My career. You'll face charges for withholding this information. You're complicit. You knew about the money. No, I'm not, I replied, picking up the chair and setting it back in its precise position. I am a victim of marital fraud who discovered my husband was engaging in severe financial crimes using our assets. I immediately reported my suspicions to the appropriate regulatory bodies, as required by law. That's my narrative, John. And unlike yours, it's entirely true and backed by evidence. He looked at the papers, then around the sterile, beautiful room, which now belonged entirely to me. He was trapped. He was financially frozen, professionally ruined, and now, his secret life was about to be exposed to Sarah, the woman he truly loved. You think you've won, he hissed, his eyes burning with helpless hatred. What about Sarah? What about the children? They are going to know the truth because of you. You're evil. You're going to make them homeless. No, John. They are going to know the truth because of you, I stated, delivering the final, absolute truth. I am not responsible for the consequences of your 7 years of malice. You are. The SEC is seizing the proceeds of the insider trading. That house in Ohio? It's collateral for the fraud. They will lose everything you gave them with stolen money. You failed them and you failed me, John. But only you are to blame. I stood up. The meal was over. I suggest you take what little cash you have left and consult a criminal defense attorney. You have 24 hours to vacate this apartment. After that, the security codes will be changed, and the doorman will be instructed to deny you entry. Don't leave anything behind. I left him there, amidst the ruins of his two worlds, and walked out of the dining room. I didn't look back. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of his absence on a business trip, it was the silence of total, absolute victory. The aftermath was swift and brutal for John. Within 2 months, he was facing federal charges related to wire fraud and insider trading. Sterling White settled quickly with the SEC, painting John as a rogue element and shielding their brand from the scandal. His reputation was utterly annihilated. He couldn't get a job managing a portfolio, let alone a hedge fund. Sarah found out the truth from the freezing of the accounts, the foreclosure notice on the Colonial House, and finally, a brief, cold email from Mr. Finch confirming that Jonathan Harper was, indeed, still legally married to Elizabeth Harper in New York. The emotional fallout for her was catastrophic, but I held firm to my decision. I was not responsible for the lives he ruined, only he was. I had destroyed the fraud, not the people. I sold the penthouse for a significant profit, capitalizing on the high-end market. The memories of his lies were too deeply embedded in the walls. I bought a stunning, sun-drenched loft downtown, a space I designed entirely myself, clean lines, exposed materials, and vast, undeniable transparency. It was a space that could harbor no shadows. I emerged from the divorce not just intact, but stronger, wealthier, and with a reputation for cold, uncompromising resolve. My firm flourished, attracting high-net-worth clients who respected my financial acumen and my fierce ability to protect my own interests. I had faced the ultimate betrayal and responded not with tears, but with a calculated strategy that dismantled the destroyer. 7 years of his life were built on a lie. 6 months of my life were spent planning the truth. I looked at the vast skyline of New York from my new windows. I was still an architect, but now I built structures that could withstand anything, including the man who had tried to build his entire life on my broken trust. Jonathan Harper was gone, his career in ashes, facing decades of financial penury and criminal consequences. And I was finally, truly, free. The silence was perfect.